Okay, thank you to Lee for giving up some of your time to talk about our new signing, Jayden. Kind of keen to hear what you think of him as a Carlisle fan. I know we've kind of swapped strikers around over the last couple of years or so, and but we've now taken another one from you, or he's released. We picked him up. Can you tell us a little bit about him? What kind of impact they had at your club, and what's their playing style like?
Yeah, so Jayden's an interesting one. So he arrived in the summer of 2022, it would be now, on a 3-year deal, which was remarkably long for us. And we paid a small fee for him, I think about 25 grand from Aldershot. But Paul Simpson was very clear when we signed him. He was a project. He wasn't the finished article. They felt he had all the raw attributes to be a really good player, but he wasn't quite ready for football level, so we probably wouldn't see him playing as much, but you'd see him maybe filling in here there over the season, and he'd get a bit of time to develop and that kind of thing. Early on, there's a few signs that he really had the physicality side of it sorted out. He's a big, strong lad, and he will bustle about and, that kind of thing. But Jayden was a bit unlucky in that, other than the games against you guys, which for some reason we were just incapable of getting a result from, we exceeded expectations dramatically that season, that first season he was in. And part of that was having such a consistent midfield. So we had Callum Guy and Owen Moxon, obviously now playing for Portsmouth in the Championship, playing every single game. And then it was between Jordan Gibson and Taylor Charters and Alfie McCalman for the third place, basically, the more attacking role in the midfield. Those other two sat a bit deeper. As a result, Jayden's chances were quite limited in that first season. He did okay when he was involved. I think he had a little injury as well, if I remember rightly. And then he just never... The second season, we were up in League One, and it was League Two was a big enough step for him. League One was just a step too far. He actually did okay in pre-season. He looked all right at times, but he never quite did enough to show that he was ready to be playing first-team football. And as a result, he ended up going out on loan. And obviously, things have happened off the pitch for us in the last year as well. Big takeover. We've got an American family in now who are, I hate to use the phrase, but splashing the cash, because they are. We're spending the best part of £8.5 million on improvements on the ground and a new training ground. So they're very serious about what they're wanting to do. And as a result, unfortunately for Jayden, we're looking at probably a higher level of player than he's currently at the very least at the moment. And that's the reason why I think essentially he's been told, look, if you can find somewhere else, sort yourself out. And yeah, that seems to be what's happened here.
Yeah, well, I think you may have covered some of this. Is have we signed a finished product, or are we going to need to be patient? What are his kind of strengths and weaknesses from what you've seen?
I think, to be fair, I think he wasn't a finished product. Definitely not a finished product at League One level. He wasn't a finished product at League Two level. There was flashes in there. He could come on and he did it all right in games. As a sub. I'm trying to find some of his stats here, but he was okay generally when he came on. And I remember he scored a goal in an FA Cup game against Tranmere where we were basically down to our bare bones at that point. We had about 2 or 3 youth players on the bench, and he started that game, and he did really well. But yeah, he's kind of. The thing about Jayden is it was a running joke that it's very difficult to put a bet on this our level, but if you could put a bet on him to get a yellow card, he was a good bet to win that, because he will just go around and kick people quite often, and he's very good at that. I mean, I'm looking at the stats here. On when you look at Wikipedia, and I think this is wrong. They say that he's 6'1.5". I think he's more like 6'3". He's a big lad. He has got the physical side of it. He's got nailed down. He just needs to work a little bit more on the technique side. And actually, there's times when he looks like he's capable of it. And in pre-season last summer, he did start to show that, but he was never going to be good enough for, for playing at League One level. But I mean, I'm looking now. Actually, the start of last season, he came on as a sub since after he signed. Most games, to be fair, he was involved. Actually, he did. From the Colchester away game onwards, Yeah, it was only up until I think just after the new year when he actually started the game and he struggled a bit. That he, in fact, no, sorry, he came on as a halftime sub against Doncaster. From that point onwards, he didn't really feature in the squad that much. And I think the end of the season, he had a bit of an injury. He was, I think, in the playoffs, he was sort of involved in terms of being on the bench for one of them, but then not in the squad for the other two. So, yeah, he had a bit of a tough time of it. And look, some of our fans think he's useless. I will be honest with that. Some of our fans don't think he's up to it. I think it's a little bit harsh. That said, I don't think he was ever once we got a bit of money and once we got to League One and we moved forward, he was never likely to feature, to be honest. We were looking at a better level of player, and the best thing he could do for his career is to go off and fair play to him. He could have stayed with us and earned his money for another year, and done that. But he wants to play football. And all the reports I've heard from people, I don't live in Carlisle myself, but people who live in Carlisle say actually a lot of people used to see him in the gym during the week, keeping himself fit and stuff. And by all accounts, he's got a really good attitude in terms of wanting to develop himself and keep his fitness up and things like that. So you're not getting someone who's a bad apple in the slightest. You're getting someone who's got a real good attitude. He just needs to work a little bit on his technique and things like that.
Excellent. I mean, I love the yellow card thing because we've just released Eastmond. So we need someone to go and get those yellow cards for us. The last question is actually similar to as you just touched on there. It's not all about on the pitch. How did he come across? Is he kind of a nice guy? Did he interact much with the fans? I know you've mentioned you're not living in Carlisle, but it does sound like he chit-chats to people.
Yeah, for all accounts, I think it was quite difficult for him as well because he moved up from the south all the way to Carlisle. A lot of the players who sign from like the northwest clubs or northeast, so they'll stay at home and just travel over. He obviously, having moved from the southeast near London, he lock stock moved up to Carlisle, and I think at times he was a little bit lonely, and I think some of his neighbours tried to help him fit in and that kind of thing, and that sort of stuff. But by all accounts, he was very good in all the community stuff. And funny enough, it just reminded me there. Last season, one of our rare highlights in League One was beating Bolton 3-1 at the Tough Sheet Stadium, as it was called at that point. Used to be the Reebok. And after we basically, me and my mates, we went across from Liverpool into Manchester up to the game and then back into Manchester for a few drinks afterwards. And we were getting the train back to Manchester, and Jadon Harris was on our train. And he came off the train afterwards and we said, "Oh, Jayden, any chance?" Because he'd come off the sub in that game. Any chance of a quick photo? And he was like, yeah, of course. So yeah, he was really friendly with us. We got on really well. And I think he was visiting some friends in Manchester possibly at that point. But yeah, lovely lads. And look, I think it's one of these things. We on our pod we always talk about. It's almost like an M25 non-league circuit, isn't it? Where like players just seem to move around clubs like yourself, like Barnet, like Dagenham. Even probably going out as far as Boreham Wood. They just seem to move around that area, don't they? And
Absolutely.
Club to club. Kind of feel like that's probably at the moment where he's at, going to be his best, and I think he'll do all right. And I think with a run of games, he could do fine for you. Eastleigh, he went on loan there last season. It was a bit tough. He played a few games, got dropped, and then got back into their team. But I don't think they were able to extend it because we weren't sure as to what we were going to do with him in the second half of the season. So. Yeah, he really good lads, and I don't think anyone's got anything bad to say about him as a person. Definitely not at Carlisle. I think some fans just thought he wasn't up to it, and it's up to him to prove us wrong. I say this on our pod, and he's not quite at the same level as him. But it reminds me of back in 2006, we got promoted from League Two as champions, and we had a certain Mr. Glenn Murray playing for us that season. But Glenn only played about 20 games as a sub that season. Because we had Michael Bridges in the team, and we had Carl Hollis scoring 26 goals, and Derek Holmes, our big target man, setting them all up. So we progressed far too quickly for Glenn. We'd signed him from non-league the previous season, and we just went too quick, and he had to leave us to build his career up again. I'm not saying Jadon Harris is going to be playing in the Premier League in 3 or 4 years' time. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying sometimes as a player, your team that you go to progresses just a bit too quickly. And the best thing you do is go back and actually play week in, week out. And I'm sure that's what he's going to end up doing with you guys. And I think generally our fans are pleased that he saw himself out really quickly as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. And good luck. Well, I thought on my things for most of the season, but we're not playing you. So good luck for all the season apart from any cup draws that we might come across.
Oh, do you know what? Our worst nightmare is drawing either you or Harrogate in the FA, in one of the cups because we just, for some reason, you two, it's teams in yellow or well, gold as yours is, we can't cope against them. So yeah, fingers crossed we don't face each other.
No problem. Thank you very much, Lee. Take care. Cheers.
Yes.
Bye.